How do you think about the type of work that Coach Kama focuses on?
There's so many parents out there and players who are obsessed with the work. Working on the wrong thing won't get you to the right place. It's just going to get you more tired. I think about it this way, Barry, and I'm not knocking anybody's, profession or job or things of that nature, but I think I like using the example of hotels. If we look at a hotel, I learned this from a guy named Myron Golden. We look at a hotel, the hardest working staff in the hotel gets paid the least.
I'm Barry Tarver, and welcome to X Factor. If you're a high school athlete, you are entering the wildest recruiting era in history. Roster spots are shrinking, and you're now competing against 22-year-old transfers for a jersey. Sounds scary, but there is a way to win. Today, Trey Mourning joins us. He's a former pro, a Georgetown Hoya, holds a master's in sports management, and runs an elite program for basketball players. He's going to help us do some roster math so you don't get left without a chair when the music stops and it's time to plan for your recruiting journey ahead. And what I like to do to start off is have Trey Mourning introduce himself and share a little bit on his background and of Coach Kama and the Varsity Performance System. And then I've got a bunch of questions for him. So Trey, if you don't mind, please introduce yourself.
Definitely, Barry. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the time. I know we got a chance to connect a while back, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So, as you mentioned, my name is Trey Mourning. I'm based in Miami, Florida, but that is neither here nor there. I run an online coaching program called Coach Kama. And what we do, we help varsity basketball players in private school 2x their scoring average in about 90 days. We do a lot more than that, but in a nutshell, I think the result that most parents and players are looking for is that switch to the click on the court and for their player to get the most out of the hard work they've been putting in time and time again. I know there's a lot going on in the basketball world, and from my background, I've been involved around professional basketball since I was a kid. My father played 16 years in the NBA, had a Hall of Fame career, and achieved much of his success through some really intense adversity, like overcoming a kidney transplant to come back and win an NBA championship. So having seen that firsthand, having had my own career, I help parents and players navigate the politics of basketball and best prepare their families for higher levels of the game, whether that be in college or the professional ranks.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. I can tell. I'm like I know we talked before about the challenges that youth face ahead, and I was thinking about your own playing journey. I'm curious, what moment, or maybe these culmination of moments that had you know that there needs to be a better system, and for you to think about this great program you've created. What are key moments or key thoughts that inspired you for it?
Yeah, definitely, man. My faith is a big part of my life, and my basketball career didn't necessarily go as the way I planned. And I always knew that there was this burning desire inside of me to do more with what it is that I had been given, the opportunities, the resources, and things of that nature. And for me, I made certain decisions, and I was influenced to make certain decisions in going to college, going to a certain school. And I noticed that I dealt with a lot of adversity as a result of listening to improper advice and people telling me to go to a place that looks like it's the right fit to go to. My final three in terms of college selections were Georgetown, Duke, and Florida. I was one of the best players in the country in the class of 2014. First team All-State here in Florida. And I had advice I had advice in my ear that sounded good, and it wasn't necessarily the best advice for my basketball career, right? And just because I think we see this with, this is a guy who I respect tremendously. He's actually on the wall behind me right now, Michael Jordan. Just because somebody's equipped to do a certain job at one level in terms of playing the game does not mean they're equipped to do it in terms of being a GM and things of that nature. So what I learned is that just because you have people around you who know the game doesn't mean they necessarily know what's best for you. And what I've learned how to do and what we've learned how to do in this program is build a customized approach for each individual player, help them decide where they want to go based off of things that players don't even think about. Like in the winter, I know you're up in Chicago, I'm down in South Florida. I got shorts and this hoodie on right now. But I ask my players honestly, like, hey, if you're calling home and it's December or January, you want to be on your way to class in in a Canada Goose, or do you want to be walking to class in shorts and a t-shirt? Like those things lead to a better lifestyle, just depending on what the player wants, right? It's their career, it's their life, it's their journey. And I believe that players need to be given more of a sense of agency. And that's not just going to pay dividends in their college career, their professional career. It's going to pay dividends in a life, because they're going to become more autonomous and confident in their decision making. Because a lot of the players that we work with, they have the resources, they have the means to be able to access certain environments and spaces that others can't. But I'm sure parents are extremely frustrated because they see their player having more than they ever had growing up, but they don't know how to tap into it and make the most of what it is that they've been given. So that's what we do in our program. That's what we help our players and families do.
Yeah, no, I know we talked about before. It's like really incredible program you offer. We mind sharing like the level, age, like specifics, like who do you view? I know the program's evolved and broadened the audience. Who's it for, and who's it not for? Who do you when you're thinking about the type of athletes that are best suited?
Definitely. So initially, it is a substantial investment for some families. I think about it this way: if a player wants to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, or maybe even more potentially at this level of basketball and college, during NIL and really the gold rush that we're having right now, you really do need, whether you work with me or somebody else, you definitely have to make an investment in your son or daughter's career in order to get them to a higher level that they want to get to. I think about it like business coaching. If there's a business coach, if there's an entrepreneur out there who wants to create a 7-figure business, but they're unwilling to pay 5 or 6 figures in the coaching and consulting that is necessary in order to get there, the math just doesn't necessarily add up. You get what you get out of it, right? So that is one of the reasons why we focus specifically on private school varsity basketball players. And the varsity perspective doesn't necessarily mean that they only have to be a varsity player, to be quite honest with you. That's just the language we use to really vet out people who aren't serious about the game. We've worked with players from as early as 13 up to 17 years old. We really don't like working with seniors, to be quite honest with you. We do see changes really quickly, and I'm sure we're going to go into some of the testimonials and case studies that we have. That being said, we don't want to be in charge of, we like working with people who take responsibility for their career. And we've noticed that sometimes with seniors or people who are just trying to make it happen last minute, it's usually this home run heave of, hey, take this mess that we have and fix it, right? We've been able to turn things around by the grace of God. At the same time, I don't think it's fair to players and families to work with them when they only have, a certain amount of time left. What we do is we do a lot of mindset work and help players understand concepts in basketball at a professional level, an extremely high level. So as a result, we want players who have the maturity to understand what it is that we're talking about. I'm sure that you can hear based off of this conversation, I not potentially that I'm using some words that are a bit different, but I speak well, right? I speak well and I articulate myself well. And I'm a person who speaks more than 4 languages, and I am well-traveled around the world, have 2 degrees from Georgetown University. So I want to work with players and families who come from that same pedigree and understand what excellence actually is. This is not me pushing people away who don't aspire to that. If you have the means to be able to move forward and invest, sure, I would love to work with you and explore that possibility. That being said, I'm really looking for somebody who wants to use basketball instead of basketball using them. And dare I say, people who don't have to play basketball, but they really want to play basketball and make this happen. And I've noticed from my perspective and what it is that I've lived, that is a success story in the making.
Yeah. Well, and this actually segues, I know before we got on this conversation, before the camera started rolling, we were talking about the title of coach and how it might, or in different situations, it's practical. A lot of basketball players, they're a part of a team, they have a coach. And I was asking you whether, the title coach, if you felt it made sense. I'm curious, just broadly, maybe before diving into your own personal, how your role and how you support athletes, your philosophy on that title of coach. Because how do you think about coaches you've had, maybe just kind of broad into coach in general, and then how your dynamic and whether your relationship with the athlete and family and how it transitions. So kind of, if you wouldn't mind, start broad, like what do you your thoughts on how, and maybe how you can go into how your program supports or separates from the role of their team coach. I'm curious, your thoughts on coach player relationship, and then how your program's involved.
Definitely. I think that's a great question, Barry. I think, as we were talking about before, I don't necessarily love the word coach, or I don't love going by the word coach. I do some coaching. I see myself more as a business owner, and I develop systems and techniques to be able to serve my clients at a high level. We've seen over 100 clients in the past 16 or so months. We're only about 16 months old as a business. Although I've done some individual work before, this is what has worked and has generated results for those we work with. So I like having a personal relationship with the parents that I work with. They have my contact information. Although they have my phone number, I really prefer to keep it in the community just because it's a lot easier to track that way. That being said, our process is a bit different because we not only work with the player, we work with the parent. We have group calls with the player, we have group calls with parents, we have a community for the parents and the players, and a community of us getting all together. They can send film, and there's a bunch of different modalities that we have within there. So there's an open line of communication. And I think what is a bit different than some of the AAU programs or school programs that are around the country right now, or even coaches or trainers who just go and work out a player for 45 minutes to an hour, parents usually just sit on the sidelines and watch, right? If they are even allowed into practice. I don't know many parents that are allowed into these practices. So we bridge that gap. And instead of the parent going, dropping their kid off and sitting there and just watching and being confused and not understanding why the player is doing the things that they're doing, we sit with the parents and the player and explain them every single thing that they need to know, any single question that they have about the game of basketball. For me, what I've seen, I had a really excellent coach. His name's Michael Fitchett. He was the last coach I had when I was playing professionally, and he coached me out in New Zealand. And believe it or not, he was the first coach to explain to me why I was actually doing what I was doing, whether it be on pick and roll coverages, whether it be on defensive schemes. He broke it down in such a way where it clicked for me. And I was able to go from averaging 5 points and 4 rebounds to 20 points and 9 rebounds. And it didn't take that long to do. It was about 30 days. And some of my first games in New Zealand at 35 and 17 or 37 and 13 or whatever those stat lines were, I was down there hooping. And it was like this switch flipped, and a lot of it came as a result of, yes, the hard work that I put in the preparation to be ready for that season, and Fitch explaining to me things that I didn't necessarily know about. So that was in 2022. And at the time I was maybe 26 years old. I'm 29 now. I'll be 30 later this year in August. And it took to 26 years old for me to have a coach to tell me all of these things. And I've grown up around basketball at the highest level. So there's a gap there. There's something missing. And just because somebody has the title coach does not make them a good coach. And just because somebody is at the level of an NBA coach, there's some bad coaches in the NBA, there's some bad organizations in the NBA. I've seen them, right? There's some fantastic organizations in the NBA as well. And I think a lot of it has to do, yes, you do have to have a player who's mature enough to be able to receive what it is that you have to say. But I think in my case, I was mature enough. Like I said, I went to the number 1 ranked high school in the country academically. And when I graduated, I think a couple of years ago, was also number 1. It's called Ransom Everglades. It's down here in South Florida. And I got 2 degrees from Georgetown, speak multiple languages, and play instruments, all these things. So it wasn't necessarily an intelligence gap for me. It was, I didn't have somebody who was able to speak my language and help it click for me. And I think the frustrating piece for all of these parents out there, and the parents that we are fortunate enough to work with, is that they know that their player is extremely intelligent. They get great grades, maybe even straight A's. And I have a player in the program, he gets bummed out when he gets a 92, right? And he's just fiending for those 8 extra points because he wants to get a perfect score every single time. But on the court, not necessarily that player. We really changed things around with him. But we've seen some players when they get on the court, they're just, I don't get how to take my intelligence to one area and put it into basketball, which is something I care about so much. And the parents are frustrated because they see the player putting in hours and hours and hours of work. And by this point, the parent has spent maybe tens of thousands of dollars on trainers and coaches and travel basketball and going to this tournament and that tournament and all these things. And what they want at the end of the day, Barry, is just to see the work, right? It's really simple. They're not asking for, I'm not a miracle worker. I'm not promising, college scholarships, although I was just thinking about it right before this call. Every player who we've worked with who's been at the age of graduation, they've either gotten a scholarship to play college basketball or a scholarship to go to college. So their college has been paid for, right? So we, again, have only been active for 16 months, but the results we've gotten are pretty amazing. If I may, I'd love to talk about some of those results.
Yeah. I think it makes sense. Well, before I do want to go into that, but you got me thinking. You're talking about the knowledge you've gained along the way, and I was thinking, kind of a little tangent, because as you're talking, so part of Exact. So we used to, and we didn't talk about this before, but so we used to do a lot of work with National Hockey League, where we'd help their entry draft, the candidates, the recruits, the athletes that they're considering for drafting. They would have a combine, and we would evaluate all the data coming in. The players would fill out a form, and one of the questions was, do you have a relative that plays elite level sport, Olympic? This is hockey, so it could be Olympic, professional, otherwise. And so it was really fascinating to me seeing the data, trying to understand what is, because you would often see, yes, there's a relative. Not always. There's certainly a lot of athletes who don't have relatives who make it. And then there were those, and it's like, why does it feel disproportionate? Because there's just such a small number of elite athletes out there that make it to the highest level. And why were there so many athletes that had some connection like that? And so, one thing we've explored and tried to understand is like two elements. Is it genetic, or is there some environmental training, some access? Because thinking about you, some level of access that you had, and there's others. We could talk about Del Curry, with his son, and LeBron James and Bronny, where there's descendants who've learned about the system. And I'm curious, because I feel like that is such a value to your to participants in your program, is that yes, you're on your own. I think secrets that you might not, I'm curious how much you were aware of it, but secrets you've learned along the way, or guidance that was given to you, and support that not every athlete can get, because not every athlete has relatives like that you're able to now pass on. Because I actually don't think it's genetic, because you see that there's a lot of, yes, anyone can different physiological people, are participating. I do think there's some cultural knowledge that might be passed on. I'm curious your thoughts on that. I know we never talked about it before, but I am super curious because you're one of the people who, like you said, highly successful in the sport itself, made it. Comes from your father, a successful player, and there's lots of examples we can go on in every sport, but I won't. But I'm curious about your own, your thoughts on that.
Definitely. No, I like to think of it this way. Some things in life are taught and other things are caught. And I definitely caught a whole lot from my dad. And then he's taught me a tremendous amount as well. And I'm extremely grateful for the role that he plays and has played in my life, in my career, in my development. I think everybody's journey is different. I will say that. And it's not completely dependent on, I think it's really what you do with the information that you're given, rather than just the information that is given. Because, I'm sure veterans like my dad have given young players in the league advice, but still the average NBA career is only 3 years, right? So there's some sort of divide there. And yes, there's politics in the game to be able to, navigate those things. I think for me, a lot of what I learned was kind of in retrospect. I think one of the things that I learned from my dad is how to fight. I think once you go through life and grow up, especially as a man, you look back and you appreciate the role that your dad has played in your life, regardless of, how you felt about it in the present moment. I don't necessarily think it's genetic. Granted, I do have a 7-foot wingspan. I'm 6'9", and I can jump, and, I can do a lot of things very well. I think the exposure to these environments is what made the biggest difference for me. Like the fact that, like these, obviously Kobe's no longer with us, but those are people who I know personally, right? Or knew personally with Kobe. And, if I see Michael today, it's a hug and how you doing and a quick catch up. Shaq, even D Wade, and, some of these players I call uncle and OG, and have just grown up around them. And I was actually talking to Udonis Haslem not too long ago. It was at a Heat game when they were honoring the Miami Heat's 2016 for the 20-year anniversary of them winning an NBA championship. And UD and I were talking together, and I said to UD, I thank you for the role that you played in my life, because you've been an OG to me. And the way I explained it to him is this: when my dad was in 2006, my dad was 36. So he's on his latter days. I think he played one more year in the NBA after that. And UD was maybe a rookie or a sophomore in the league. And it was kind of this full circle moment of my dad being the OG to UD, and then UD teaching me some of the things when I was coming up. Same thing with D-Wade. D-Wade was a rookie in 03. I think he was in year 3 when they won the championship. So I've just learned so much from these guys, and I've caught a whole lot from these guys. And I was telling the players in the community the other day that, it's not always like the nuggets that you get from these guys. It's seeing that they're human beings as well, and seeing that the best players in the world are human beings, and they bleed, and they miss shots, and they have off days just like everybody else. That is what gives me motivation. It has given me motivation. The moments when I surprise myself of, okay, I'm shooting better than this person, and it's not a fluke, right? It's just a result of getting the reps in and being around the right environments and seeing that. And I'm a big believer, and my mother has taught me this, so I give her a lot of credit as well. She taught me that you can become in life what it is that you see. And a lot of times people don't know what it is, what is possible. And you need to expose people to environments and ideas and concepts that they've never seen before. And once they see it, they can't unsee it. That's the click that we're after in our business, right? In my business and Coach Kama. And when I see the player have that click, I know my job is done, because I planted a seed and they saw something that they would never see otherwise. And that's what makes this process worth it. And that's why the process doesn't take that long. Yes, we run a 6-month program. We like being thorough and tracking the progress of the player over time. That being said, Barry, we had a kid come into the program, and at the time it was a 6-month program. We've done shorter programs of 3 months, but this one was 6 months, and it will remain 6 months for the foreseeable future. This player comes in, and I think we hopped on a sales call, and he joins the program with his parents. And I think this was maybe on a Monday or Tuesday. Let's say he attends one more call throughout that week, or 1 or 2 more calls, whatever it is. And that Saturday, I get a message from the mom, and she's like, this is crazy. Like, he had 23 in a game, right? So he was coming in and averaging 5 and 6, 23 on Saturday. And then she texts me again on Sunday. She's like, this is ridiculous. He has 24 and a half. And he ended up finishing the game with 31 points, right? And yes, I did see this player as time went on, but he didn't show up to as many calls as he did before, because he got his results so quickly, right? So yes, you do get what you put into it. At the same time, I'll tell you another story quickly. There was a young man who I actually never worked with in an official capacity. We hopped on a call. Granted, I don't do any coaching on calls. It's really just getting to understand the family and the situation, and whether or not it's the right decision to move forward. Because if it's not the right decision to move forward for me or for them, I'm not going to do it. But we hop on this call, and we're going to have a follow-up call the next day, which is something we were doing at the time. And right before that call, I get a message from the dad, and the dad's like, hey, my son's not going to be on the call today. He's actually going to quit basketball. And I was like, what? Like, where is this coming from? It was just surprising to me. So I'm like, hey, is it all right if you give me the son's number? So he gives me the son's number, and maybe on a Saturday or Sunday, I hop on the phone with him for about 20 minutes. And after that, Barry, I don't hear from him for a good 3 to 4 months. And I'm hopping on another call with another family 3 to 4 months down the line. I get another message from the dad. He's like, hey, I don't know what you said to my son, but thank you. He sends me a picture, and the son had won the co-MVP of the state championship game in Tennessee. And he was number 1 in blocks and tied for number 1 in rebounds, right? So that was a 20-minute conversation, Barry. And
That's great.
Obviously some amazing things have happened And I can't take full credit for, the work that this player put in. At the same time, I must have said something that made an impact. We've had players who've had a conversation with me and gone off and won tournaments. And this is another case, just a player winning the co-MVP of the state championship game. He went from quitting to this. And, we've had players get scholarships, and family dynamics completely change. Like, families just have peace of mind, and, mothers crying, and I'm sure dads getting emotional in their own way, just because of the change that we've been able to create within their family. Kids are more confident going to school and in life and the way they carry themselves. They're no longer listening to their peers and being a follower. They're being a leader in all these spaces, which I know is a big thing for some of these parents as well. So, Barry, we've just been fortunate enough to be a part of the changes in the lives of all of these families in the past 16 months. And we're only 16 months old as a business, and we've seen over 100 players and parents in that process, probably close to 150, 170 now, maybe. So we've grown tremendously by the grace of God, and it's been a fun process as well to be able to do this.
That's incredible. I'm curious how in terms of the type of work and how you focus the effort. Like, I think of how we often think in terms of, like, sometimes like mental, the mental stuff side of the game, like if someone lacks confidence or focus or whatever mental elements. The technical, do they know how to sort of specific skills, how to do a jump shot? What's the so it's a technical thing. Then, like, physical things could be like, are they strong enough, fast enough, etc. I'm curious, how do you program? How do you, when you think of it, is it every a full full athletic? Is it focused on certain components within it? How do you think about the type of work that Coach Kama focuses on?
Definitely. So it's really a comprehensive job that we do, Barry. And I'm a big believer that the way you are in one way on the court is the way that you are in the same way off the court, right? You can't flip a switch and become Superman here and then turn to Clark Kent. I'm not a believer of that, right? I think it's really important to be consistent, and we have this comprehensive approach that we call the starting five. So what the starting five includes is there are 5 things that I want players to do every single day, right? I want them to make sure they're getting their sleep, and it has to be done in this order. Make sure you get your rest and your sleep. Then you're going to be eating on a consistent basis around the clock. And we have a nutritionist partner within the program who I connect players with if they want to go deeper and do individualized work with her. And then from there, it's really about lifting and getting your workouts in, taking care of your body, making sure your body's strong. And we haven't even touched the basketball by that point, Barry, right? We focus on getting the rest. We focus on getting the nutrition to build the body up and build that firm foundation and even grow. And then we're lifting weights. I'm sure you've seen it where, you watch plenty of basketball games, I'm sure youth basketball games, and there's that one kid who comes in, he's a football player by trade, and he's just bigger and stronger than everybody, pushing people out the way, and has 14 rebounds by halftime because he's just throwing up the ball and missing it and catching it again and again and again, right? And you got these kids who have busted their butt and put in so much work on the basketball court. And they're like, why is this person getting more playing time than me? Why is this person getting more opportunity? Well, they're just bigger than you, right? So if we can develop the foundation for the player, like my father, for example, he's known for being a very, very big man. He was a beast during his day, and he's still very big. The weight room at the Miami Heat Arena is actually called the Zoe Zone because of him. And I got that honest. I love lifting weights, and I see the importance of it. And my father was also able to have a 16-year NBA career as a result of how he took care of his body. And that had to do with sleep, nutrition, and it had to do with lifting weights. So those are the first 3 things that we take care of there. From there, we have a very individualized workout program that we give all of our players. And this is something that I've done myself. If I were to start my career again today, I would do this exact workout on repeat. And it handles every single situation that you're going to find out on the basketball court, offense, defense, things of that nature. Once you do this workout consistently, it's probably going to take 45 minutes to an hour and a half potentially. And it's really just detailed work. Granted, I know not everybody has that time every single day to do this, so I want to be realistic. Nor am I asking a player to lift weights every single day. What I am asking them to do is lift about 4 times a week and take care of their body consistently, whether they're throwing in a Pilates class. I'm a Pilates guy myself, a stretch session, mobility session, things of that nature. So there's the 3. And then we have this workout that we do, and we can cater it to the needs of specific players and their game. And it's really comprehensive to make sure they can play in today's type of basketball, because today's basketball, it really is about being skillful in all these different positions. But we all know players who are skillful, but they just get pushed around on the court. So that's why we take care of the nutrition and the size and the lifting weights before. After that, and only then, that is when you're playing basketball with your teammates. That's when you're going out there on the court and practices and games and things of that nature. Because yes, that can help you get better, but I promise you, Barry, it's not going to help you become a college-ready player or a professional player in today's age. And we tied all of that in with film. So once these 5 are completed, you send me film and I review it. I give you feedback. You speak to the resources and the people that I have within the community to be able to point you in the right direction. And right now we have, it's really just my Rolodex of context. There's a nutritionist that I really trust, and she gets great results for the players. I think in the past 7 weeks, it was one of the players who we're working with now. He's increased his hours of sleep per night by 2.5 hours. I think he's gained more than 4 pounds of lean muscle mass in just 7 weeks, right? And I think there was another metric that changed as well. But just overall, he's noticing some physical differences in his body and just how he's growing. So the changes don't take long. I think about it this way. There's so many parents out there and players who are obsessed with the work, right? The grind. But working on the wrong thing won't get you to the right place. It's just going to get you more tired. I think about it this way, Barry, if and I'm not knocking anybody's, profession or job or things of that nature, but I think I like using the example of hotels, right? If we look at a hotel, I learned this from a guy named Myron Golden. We look at a hotel, the hardest working staff in the hotel gets paid the least, right? The cleaning team, right? They're changing the sheets and all these things and doing so much manual labor. It's hard work, and it's not necessarily producing the best result in terms of return on investment. But you have people who are working hard in other ways and working smart in other ways, and they're getting reimbursed. I think about like a tire, spinning their tires in the sand again and again. No matter how much you step on the gas and how much force the car puts out, it's still just going to spin and be stuck in the sand. And at the end of the day, some players look back and like, man, I put in all the work. I did this and I did that. It's like, well, you didn't work on the right things, and they have to be done in the right order in order to get you to the right place. So I'm a big believer in working smart. And a lot of the players who come into the community, they're hard workers already. So Barry, to be honest with you, I don't spend a lot of time watching their film before they join. I'm not concerned about that. I can have a conversation with a parent and a player and understand where their mind's at and see if it's the right move to move forward. Then once they send me information, that's when we work with that. I'm not necessarily concerned about watching their film because it doesn't really matter. I take people who already work really hard at the game. I help them get the most out of the game that they can in a very, very short amount of time.
That makes a lot of sense. I was thinking when you talk about the work smarter, because I was thinking about the example you gave with the football player who has a lot of rebounds. So they're working hard. They're working hard to get rebounds, but it's not a smart method because they should be working on their shot. Instead of grinding all, it's like wasting time. And I don't know, that's totally apples to apples, but I was like, oh yeah, like you can do something where you're just working so hard and not having success. I'm curious, if you don't mind, I've got 2 lightning questions I want to ask.
Sure.
And then I've got like a bigger follow-up on Coach Com at the end. But if you were, okay, so you mentioned talking to parents, and we've been talking a lot about the work you do with the athlete. On the parent, like what is, first, what's the typical relationship you have with a parent that's separate from the athlete? And then as a part of that, is there a general piece of advice you do see as a common thread, maybe across all parents that you're giving them? And I know every situation is different, but is there something that more commonly you're like, oh, here's how you help them?
So for the parents, the relationship that we have with them is really just depending on what it is that they want to out of this process. I know everybody's goals are different. And when I ask people if we're speaking in Instagram DMs or in some other media, I'm like, hey, what's the goal that you have for your player, right? Because they may have a goal and their player may have a completely different goal. So it's really about getting everybody on the same exact page. And I've said this and I'll say it again, and this is one of the favorite quotes that I use to all the parents in the program. The best gift that they can give their player is a better version of themselves, hands down, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a coach, right? Or I'll use that term, I'm a coach. And as a coach, I'm only going to be with the player for X amount of hours out the week, but they're going to be at home much longer. They're going to be around their parents, hopefully much longer, right? So it's really about the environment that their parents are able to create and how their parents are responding differently in certain situations. Because as I mentioned before, some things are taught, some things are caught. So if the player is catching all the wrong things from their parents because their parents can't handle stress, or their parents are workaholics, or their parents, turn to their, workouts or other vices in order to, deal with stress, that player is going to be an overwhelmed person as well, right? And I think a lot of parents are looking externally at a situation that's going on with their player, and they're just frustrated. They're like, why can't we fix this? Why can't we solve this? We don't get it. This. Well, they have to look internally, because they were a major reason as to why their players in the position that they are right now. So it's really about dealing with stuff that's happened in the past with them. No, I'm not a licensed therapist. At the same time, I've been through plenty of therapy. I was one of the chaplains for the Miami Heat as well. So I'm familiar with counseling people and professionals through what it is that they're walking through, right, as a coach. So that being said, man, I think it's really important for parents to be introspective and focus on what it is that they can improve about their own lives so they could show up better for their players. That's first and foremost, right? So we spend time having group discussions with the parents. I have, rarely do I have individual conversations with the parents unless it's an absolute emergency. I really learned over the time of the past 16 months that things are better in a community. And the reason being is, let's say yourself, Barry, and some other adults and come together and we're having a conversation. You may ask a question that sparks an idea in a mom, right? And that mom may have a question that sparks another idea in a dad, right? And that just gets things rolling again and again and again and again. And this is another saying that I really enjoy. It's not what you don't know that can trip you up. It's what you don't know that you don't know. Yeah. And on the flip side, it's not what you don't know that makes a world of difference in your career or your game. It's what you don't know that you don't know. And in order to get that information, that hidden information, those things that you didn't even think about, you have to get around some people who have thought about those things and experienced basketball at a high level. Because there's a lot of people who are playing a game and fighting a battle that is down here, when in actuality, NBA players are up here and they're playing a game within the game that's completely different. So if you get a high schooler playing at that level where they're seeing things differently and making reads as a professional, their game just skyrockets. And it doesn't have to do with doing more workouts or ball handling drills. It has to do with getting out of their own way and taking a leap of faith to invest in their journey going forward in a way that they haven't done before.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is really incredible, Trey. I can see the huge impact that your program has, really getting the athlete prepared. Like you said, both not just on the court, well, the preparation that goes into the preparation.
Yeah.
What's the first step? How should athletes, how should families, is there a resource you'd point them to, or, yeah, and maybe if you want something to share, we can add to our show notes to the content. But is there something, a way, you want to summarize, like how best, someone starts the program with you?
Definitely. Yeah. So they can always reach out to me on Instagram, Trey Mourning _. And that is the best way to get in contact with me. And we'll have a quick conversation and discuss whether or not it's the right fit. I also have content on YouTube. We have testimonials up from some of the families that we've worked with so far. We have videos just explaining the program and the process. There's one that talks specifically about how I went from averaging, how I 4X my scoring average and more than double my rebounding average in less than 30 days. And when watching that video, it goes over a pretty, granted that is an older iteration of our program, what it is that we were running. It's changed a bit and evolved since I originally launched that video, but it does give them a good understanding of what to expect. And really, I want to work with people who are ready to move forward. I'm not looking to work with people who are on the fence, because my time is the most valuable thing that I have, just as their time is the most valuable thing that they have. So this is for people who are at the point where they're like, hey, I need to make a change. Where do I sign? Obviously in a conversation, we're going to understand whether or not it's the right fit. I'm going to ask you some questions, and we're going to get to know one another, because it's very important. I don't want your son or daughter to not like me. Certainly hope they do. And I want to make sure I like them too, right? I want to make sure this is the right fit for the both of us, because I would hate to have a player in the community who isn't going to put in the effort or get the most out of the process. It'd be a waste of my time. It'd be a waste of their time and a waste of their family's investment, right? So those are the ways that you can get in touch with us. And on our videos as well on YouTube, there's going to be a link at the bottom so they can book a call with me directly if they do feel like it is the right point to move forward. But I highly recommend that it be the right time to move forward.
Oh, it is great. So to summarize the audience, as you're listening, please do reach out to Trey Mourning, coach, so you can learn more about Coach Kama and the Varsity Performance System. This is such an incredible program. If you really are committed to taking your development to the next level and ready to improve your game, both like I said, on the court and the steps that are in advance and post game as well. Please reach out, book a phone call. And I want to thank you again for taking time today with me, Trey. Really enjoyed this conversation, and looking forward to certainly chatting again sometime.
No, thank you, Barry. I really do appreciate your time. I want to say one more thing before we part ways for now. What we've noticed, and I want to make this very clear to some of the parents who are considering joining the program, is that there's no right time to start. Right? We've had players who joined during the season, and they said, "Hey, I wish I could potentially join during the off season just to get some more." Or at least when they first joined, right? They joined during the season, and they're like, "Oh, maybe we should join during the off season just to make sure we have more time." And we've had players who joined during the off season, like, "Dang, I wish I was in season so I could apply some of these things." So there really is not a right time to do this. I'm a big believer in life that you make time for what it is that you care about. If you really wanted to be there, you would make the time to be able to be there. I'm a firm believer of that. So we all got 24 hours. These two gentlemen on the wall behind me all had 24 hours, and they did some really amazing things in basketball, just as you and I have 24 hours, Barry. So it really is about that. And we don't do phone calls; we do Zoom calls. So I'll see the parents on a Zoom call sometime soon. Parents and the player.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I agree. When you talk about timing as essential, it's people do often at a time routine. You wait too late because you're trying to time whatever it is, time the market, time starting a new program, and it's really I can't remember that quote, but everyone's like, "Oh, the right time was yesterday" or something. Yep. But today's something like that. Today's
the best time 20 years ago, and the second best time is today.
Yeah, because it is true. Where I've noticed if you wait, you're delaying. You're actually probably it's likely you're not going to actually do it. And so if you're committed to development, people, athletes and families should be reaching out to you to have that Zoom conversation and learn more if it's a right fit for them. So thank you again, Trey. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
And we'll speak soon. Appreciate it.
Of course.